Hey there, my name's James. I'm an Airbnb expert and the author of Airbnb for Dummies. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about a few of the different ways that people are making millions of dollars all around the world on Airbnb. Now, one of the really cool things about Airbnb is that it's created this multi-billion-dollar economy all over the world between actual hosting on Airbnb, Airbnb software companies that have come into play, there's Airbnb cleaning companies, there's laundry companies, there's all these different auxiliary services, key delivery services, everything you can imagine, all focused and revolving around Airbnb. And so over the last sort of 10 years here, since Airbnb has taken this massive growth curve and now has more rooms than all 5 of the top major hotel companies in the entire world all put together, obviously there's a huge economy that's been sparked by that. And in this video, I want to talk specifically about 3 of the main ways that people are making millions of dollars all over the world using Airbnb. Now, in these 3 methods, we're not going to talk about anything that requires any specialized skill or any kind of expertise background, like for example, starting a software company in this space, though obviously lots of people are making great money and have very successful businesses built all around that. We're going to focus on 3 of the simplest and most common ways that people all over the world are becoming very successful using Airbnb and leveraging that platform. Now, the 3 ways that we're going to talk about today are number 1, hosting your own place on Airbnb, whether that's anything from a pull-out couch or a blow-up mattress in your living room through to a spare bedroom or maybe an entire property that you have, whether that's real estate investment property or a vacation rental property. So we're going to talk about that as strategy number 1, using your own space and renting it out on Airbnb. The second method that we're going to talk about is something called rental arbitrage. This is where people will rent properties for a fixed monthly rate and then flip them onto Airbnb and earn an additional income above and beyond what they're paying in rent, and that difference is going to be their profit after some different expenses. And the last method we're going to talk about is going to be one called co-hosting, or the management fee model. Now, spoiler alert, this is one of the best methods in my opinion for anyone who's just starting out and looking to get started with hosting. The other 2 options are really great if you already have a property or if you have some money, typically about $5,000 to $7,000 to invest into renting a property, furnishing it, setting it all up. But if you have no money to invest or you don't want to invest money and you want to get started with Airbnb without any risk and really maximizing your opportunity, co-hosting is a really great option in my opinion. Now, I personally have done all 3 different models. Co-hosting, by the way, is when you're managing a property for someone else in exchange for a percentage of the overall revenue. So, doing this means that you don't have to invest into renting the place, furnishing it, etc. And you're going to make on average about 20 to 30% as a management fee in exchange for taking care of the daily operations of running the property. So we're going to talk about these 3 different methods, and my goal for this video is that by the end of it, you're going to come out really understanding each one of these 3 different methods and understanding whether one of them is a good fit for you if you're looking to earn some additional income, whether that's just a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s extra each month, or if you want to build this into a full-time income. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about each one of these methods, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a really clear idea of which one is right for you and if overall you even want to get started earning some money on Airbnb. At the end of this video and throughout, I'm also going to mention some tools that I'm going to be linking to in the description below. So throughout, I'm going to be offering up some different free tools and resources that will help you to get started depending on which one of the 3 methods that you choose, and everything's going to be linked down in the description below. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it and let's get started talking about method number 1, which is hosting your own space on Airbnb. Now, when you're hosting your own space on Airbnb, this is one of the really cool ways to get started on Airbnb if you do have the luxury of having a spare space. And the nice thing is that that can be anything from, like I said, as little as just a blow-up air mattress in your living room through to maybe it's a pull-out couch, maybe you have a spare bedroom in your space, maybe you're going out of town for a weekend or for a couple weeks for a holiday and you want to rent out your space on Airbnb, or maybe you have a vacation property or you have a real estate investment property and you want to put that property on Airbnb and earn a better return on it than you typically would elsewhere. Now, this is a really awesome method because you can earn a lot of additional income and you can earn a lot more typically on short-term rental than you can on long-term rental. Now, most people tend to think that this only applies in places where it's a hot vacation rental market, it's a popular tourist destination, a big city. But the reality is that, you're gonna have lower housing costs and lower long-term rent costs in a place like Boise, Idaho than you would in New York City. And so although you won't be able to earn as good of a return total on an Airbnb in Boise, Idaho as you would in New York City, relative to the rental costs and relative to the cost of owning that property, you're actually still going to be able to earn a really good amount of money. And oftentimes the smaller cities with lower rent costs and lower mortgage costs, lower property expenses, that are actually going to yield the best returns. I'm going to link in the description below here to an article you can check out that shows some of the top cities for Airbnbs in terms of the arbitrage, the difference between the actual cost of owning that property and what it can bring in profit on Airbnb. Now, one of the other cool applications of this strategy of hosting your own property on Airbnb is that you can use it to do what I call rental hacking, house hacking, and do something that I did in downtown Toronto for a number of years, which is effectively be able to live completely rent-free. So the way that you do this, it'll depend on the market that you're in, just how much money you can earn, but typically you'll be able to completely offset the cost of your rent, sometimes even earn a couple hundred or even up to $1,000 or $2,000 a month in additional profit just from hosting the spare bedrooms in the place that you rent. Now, for me in Toronto, I've done this with a few different properties throughout the years, and what I started out doing was just renting out my pull-out couch. So I had a pull-out couch that I'd rent on Airbnb and make some extra money. And I actually ended up moving into a place that had one spare bedroom. So it was a 2-bedroom plus a big living room with a pull-out couch. And by renting out just that spare bedroom and the pull-out couch, obviously with the landlord's approval, I was able to completely offset the cost of my rent. I later actually moved into a 3-bedroom property and did the same exact thing with 2 spare bedrooms. I didn't do the pull-out couch this time, but because I had 2 actual bedrooms, they were able to bring in more money overall than a 1-bedroom and a pull-out couch in the living room. And so with that property, I was actually able to profit a couple $100s a month on top of completely covering my expense of my rent. So living in a city like Toronto, where rent is obviously very expensive, for a 1-bedroom, you're typically going to be running anywhere from about $1,800 to $2,200 a month. And I was able to completely cover that cost of rent, and I was able to put a couple $100s of profit back into my pocket each month. Now, what this entails is pretty simple. You just take the space, you put it up on Airbnb, and all I'm really doing to make that additional income is I'm going to be messaging a couple guests, I'm going to be setting my pricing, which is something I go in and I'll adjust maybe once a week. And then I'm going to be going and just turning over the unit, turning over that bedroom, changing out the sheets, doing a cleanup every time a guest checks out before a new guest checks in. So it's pretty simple. It really only takes a couple hours a week to implement this and to be making, a couple $1,000s and completely offsetting the cost of my rent, because the majority of the income isn't coming from my time, it's coming from me leveraging this asset, which is a property or a bedroom in downtown Toronto that I now control by having rented it. Now, one of the trickiest things about this method, as is the same with rental arbitrage, which is the next step on our list, is going to be getting the landlord's approval to actually put the place on Airbnb. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, well, it's going to be pretty hard, if not impossible, to get a landlord to actually allow you to run an Airbnb. And so what, are you supposed to do it illegally, or are you supposed to do it without your landlord's permission? Now, I definitely don't recommend that. And though it can be challenging to get your landlord to say yes to letting you rent the property on Airbnb, it's definitely far from impossible. In my experience, typically about 1 out of 3 landlords are going to say yes to letting you put the place on Airbnb. So not everyone is going to say yes. It does require a little bit more legwork in the initial stages of finding that property and the one that's the best fit. And so if you already have a property on Airbnb, you already have a property that you rent and you're looking to put it on Airbnb, obviously you only have one shot at asking that landlord for permission. So we can go over a couple tips as to how to do that and why a landlord might say yes, but ultimately this strategy is going to be a lot easier to implement if you have the luxury of being at a place where right now you're looking for a new place to rent, and you can look at a couple different properties and make sure ahead of time that your landlord is actually okay with it. Now, kind of going into strategy number 2, and this is where we'll talk about as well why a landlord might say yes to this. Strategy number 2 is similar, but it's basically something called rental arbitrage. So rather than living in a property and renting out a spare bedroom or pull-out couch, this is a strategy that involves you actually going to a property and a property owner who's looking to rent the place long-term. You would furnish it, you'd rent it from them, furnish it, pay the security deposit. So typically you're looking at an out-of-pocket expense of about $5,000 to $7,000 that you're investing into this property to get it set up and get it started. And then you're going to put it on Airbnb. And the hope is that if you're renting it for, let's say, $2,000 a month, that you can ideally bring in $2,500, $3,000 a month maybe on Airbnb, and that $500 to $1,000 of additional income, that's your profit. Now, over the course of the year, that's going to pay off your first and last month's rent. You're going to get your cost of furniture covered, and you're going to be profitable over the course of the year. That's at least the goal. Now, again, with this, you need to get the landlord's permission. You can't just sign a traditional lease, tell the property owner that you're moving in there, and then all of a sudden flip it onto Airbnb. Most lease agreements that you enter into are going to have a clause in them that doesn't allow subletting. So you have to make an addendum to that lease. You have to alter it and obviously do that with your landlord's permission, because they're going to be signing on the lease as well, to make sure that you're actually allowed to put the property up on Airbnb. Now, there's a couple different reasons why a landlord might want to do this. One reason is that they're going to get a relatively stable tenant. As long as you're earning a profit every month, there's no reason that you would want to move out of the property after a year or whatever, however long. There's no risk of you getting married and, or having kids or deciding you want to live in a different part of town. It's a business, and so it can be a lot more stable for that property owner. They can potentially have a tenant that they're going to have there for several years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, as opposed to having to find a new tenant every single year, every time that the person changes their mind and wants to move out. So it can be a little bit more stability for them, and real estate investors tend to really like stability. Another thing that's nice for them is that sometimes you can offer them additional rent. If you know you're going to make a set amount of profit, you might be able to throw in an extra $50 or $100 a month in rent payments, which can be really desirable for some landlords. And another thing that's really nice is that they can get optics on the property. They can actually see the property on Airbnb, see the reviews coming in on it. They know it's not being trashed. They know it's being well taken care of. They know that it's being turned over and that a cleaning team is going in there, and that all regular maintenance is being taken care of, every couple of days. So again, the property is going to be really well taken care of, which is again a plus for a lot of property owners and people that are looking to rent their property long term. Now, obviously, with this method, you do have to put the property up, you have to furnish it, you've got to get it all ready. So like I said, there is going to be an out-of-pocket expense of typically on the low end $5,000 to about $7,000 a month, or sorry, $5,000 to $7,000 total for getting the property just set up. And then you're going to have your monthly rent payments. So the monthly part is that obviously if you don't crack that nut each month, if you don't actually earn additional to what you're paying in rent, you can actually lose money. Now, this is pretty rare if you know what you're doing and you know how to select the right property. There's a couple of tools that I'll link to down below that will help you to do that, help you to analyze the profitability of different properties in your area. But you have to know what you're doing, because obviously with this model, because you're on the hook for a monthly rent payment, you have to make sure that you're actually going to make more than that on Airbnb. For example, here in Toronto, where I'm located, I've done rental arbitrage with a number of different properties and had a lot of the months in the summer. It's very, very easy to make $1,000 a month in profit in the summertime, but in the winter time when no one's traveling to Toronto or relatively few people are coming to Toronto, you're mostly catering to the odd occasional person who's coming in for family or people that are coming for business, because Toronto is not a very desirable place to be in the winter time. So in January and February, you have to be careful, because in some months you might actually lose a little bit of money or you might break even. And so you just have to make sure that you're prepared for that from a cash flow perspective. Now, the third model, the one that I recommend most highly for anyone who's just getting started out, who wants to make some additional income, or for anyone who doesn't have a landlord that is going to allow them to rent their property on Airbnb and they want to still offset the cost of their rent. The third method is something called co-hosting, called the management fee model. And this is a really great model where people are, again, earning millions of dollars all over the world. It's really great because you can do it from any location, because you can do it completely remotely. And like I said, you're going to have the ability to actually do this while managing for other people, rather than taking it and renting it and then flipping it onto Airbnb. So there's no lease addendums, nothing like that. Basically, the way that this works is that co-hosting is taking all the aspects of the day-to-day management of an Airbnb, and you're taking that off of someone's plate for them. So anytime that you look at an industry or a business model where people are making a lot of money, one of the questions I really like to ask myself is, what is the problem that's being solved? right? Because in any business, if you're not actually solving a valuable problem for people, then you're not going to have a very sustainable business model, and there's probably something that's a little bit unethical about what you're doing. You know, ultimately, people are going to pay money to have their problems solved, and so you want to make sure that your business is actually solving a problem. Now, the co-hosting model is taking a very common problem in the world of Airbnb hosting, which is that if you think about an average property owner, Joe, you know, Joe has his property and he's used to renting it on long-term rental. He's a real estate investor. He's got, let's say, a one-bedroom apartment, and he's always had it for that last number of years, just leased out to people on a 12-month lease. Suddenly his friend tells him one day, well, you know, Joe, you can put this property on Airbnb, and if you just pay to furnish it, get it set up, you put it on Airbnb, you're actually going to earn a lot more money than what you're earning right now leasing out to people on a 12-month lease. And so Joe considers it. Joe decides he's going to put his property up on Airbnb, and he does it, and he's able to earn some additional income, but he realizes two things pretty quickly, and this is the problem that we're going to be solving with co-hosting model. Is that Joe realizes that this is actually taking up a lot more time than he's used to. Yeah, he's making additional income. Sure, the returns are better, but it's also taking up a lot of his time. Real estate investing isn't what he does full time. It's something he does on the side. And so Joe doesn't want to keep on managing this thing and responding to all the guest messages who are asking questions about the property, asking how to connect to the Wi-Fi, those sorts of things. He doesn't really know what he's doing when it comes to pricing optimization. So he knows that he's leaving some money on the table with that. And he doesn't want to spend time on things like messaging the cleaners to make sure they go there on time, they do a good job, the place is prepared for the next guest who's about to check in, all that sort of stuff. And so as a co-host, you're basically taking that and you're going to Joe and you're saying, hey Joe, I'll take care of managing all of that. I'll take care of everything so that you can just sit back and relax like you used to do with your 12-month tenants, and I'm going to take a 10 or 20 or 30% management fee, average is about a 20% management fee, in exchange for doing all that. Now, in most markets, in most properties all over the world, even after that 20%, Joe is still going to be earning more than what he would be earning on long-term rental. So he's still earning more money, and Joe doesn't have to do anything anymore. Now, in a lot of cases, because a property owner isn't actually able to optimize the property themselves and doesn't really know what it takes to make that property perform exceptionally well and really optimize the pricing and performance of that listing, if you know a couple of good tricks and you know the right strategy and you know how to make the property perform really well, you can, in most cases, actually help Joe to earn more money than they were even managing the property themselves on Airbnb. Imagine a property that Joe is managing and he's earning $4,000 a month managing that property on Airbnb himself. Well, if someone like myself can come in and I can go to Joe and I can help him to improve the performance, optimize the listing, make a few tweaks, they're going to help that property to earn $5,000 a month on Airbnb, and I take a 20% cut, then Joe is still walking away with $4,000 every month. He's making exactly as much as he was when he was doing all the legwork himself. Now I'm doing it, I'm helping the property perform better, and I'm walking away with $1,000 a month that I'm earning in profit. Now, the other thing is that obviously some properties around you, wherever you're located, might not be earning numbers like $4,000 or $5,000 a month. They might be bringing in closer to $2,500 or $3,500 a month, depending on the property. Typically, you'll want to be managing properties that, in my opinion, are going to be managing for earning at least $3,500 a month. So you're not earning any less than about $600 a month for managing that property. But the nice thing about co-hosting is that, like I said, you can manage properties anywhere in the world. They don't have to be local to you right in your city. So it's really easy to be able to pick up properties anywhere in a hot market where it is going to be earning good money and make a lot of great money as a co-host. So typically we're managing properties that are earning anywhere from $700 to $1,200 a month in management fees. And so to offset the cost of your rent, you're probably going to only have to manage about one or two different properties around wherever you want to manage them. The other thing is that this is very scalable because you're not investing money constantly into managing more properties, into expanding your business. With the rental arbitrage model, you have to invest $5,000 to $7,000, like I said, every time that you want to pick up a new property. And so that can be quite costly because obviously you're going to be scaling the business, and every time you start to make profit from the business, if you want to grow, you have to put that profit back into the business. And so you're not actually able to really spin off profit for yourself to live off of, to do whatever you want to do with your money. So that can be challenging, and then obviously the risk factor. With co-hosting, you can grow the business a lot more quickly because it doesn't require thousands of dollars to pick up a new property. You can pick up a new property for nothing. You can typically earn a bit of money when you pick up a new property, charge a property owner an onboarding fee for some of the things you're going to initially do to get the property set up. And then that allows you to scale a lot more quickly. And obviously there's no risk involved with managing on percentage management fee, because even if worst case scenario, the property made $0 in a month, 20% of zero is still zero. So you're not actually going to lose money. You would just make less money if the property doesn't perform well. So hopefully this has been really helpful. If you want to check out a couple of these different models, I'm going to link to a couple different resources in the description below. So specifically for model number 1, if you want to host your own space on Airbnb and you want to earn some additional income doing that, then I'm linking to a free training that I've got put together that basically just walks through the step-by-step on how to do that. Obviously in this 10, 15, 20-minute YouTube video, I'm only able to go into so much detail around it. So if you really want to become a better host and learn what it takes to actually start hosting successfully on Airbnb, then I'm going to link to that. You can also check out my book, like I mentioned, Airbnb for Dummies, which is going to just cover all those basics as well. So that's a cool resource to check out. And then for model number 2, if you're interested in rental arbitrage, you're still going to need a lot of those same resources. You'll want to check out the tool that I linked to that will help you to analyze the profitability of different properties, so you can see what properties are going to be the best fit in your area and analyze how they'll perform. And then, like I said, I linked before as well in the description to a tool that's going to help you to see some of the properties where that arbitrage is the greatest between what you rent it for long term and what you can actually bring on an Airbnb, because that's obviously important. That's going to be your profit. And then lastly, if you are interested in managing other people's properties and using that co-hosting, that management fee model, then I've linked in the description to another free training that I've got put together that goes into more detail on specifically how to do that, the step-by-step for it. Again, all this is free. They're just available for you in the resources section in the description down below. So go ahead and check those out. And hopefully this has been a good idea, giving you a good insight into those 3 different models and help you to understand how you can potentially earn a couple hundred, a couple thousand, or even full-time income from managing properties on Airbnb, whether that's your own or someone else's. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and check out my channel for some more videos on all kinds of Airbnb related content. I'm going to be releasing new videos weekly that dive into some of the more specifics and some bigger just topics around Airbnb, because it's an area that I'm experienced in and that I'm really passionate about. So I hope to see you on some future videos, and I hope that you found this one extremely helpful.